Hi, everyone. We'll give you a second to get everything connected here. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where in the world you're calling in from. Thanks for joining us today. Wonderful. My name is Katie Morgan. I am the climate lead here at MIT Solve. I will be walking you through the application clinic today. I'm joined by my colleague Eliana, who's a senior officer for our Innovator Support Program, who will be helping me in the chat, answering some questions, and reminding me of anything I miss. And we are recording this session to allow folks that either join us late to catch up on things that they missed. Also as a point of reference for you to review it later on in the application phase. Yes, we will have time at the end for question and answers. And of course, as I'm going through a presentation, happy to hear your questions. Just drop them in the chat. Either Eliana will respond to them or I will respond to them as we go through. Wonderful. Great to have you, Maria from Panama. Would love to hear where others are calling in from as well. And I think to get started with these application clinics, we have a few of them coming up. So this is a great chance to give you a little bit of an intro into the opportunity that is MIT Solve and our global challenges. We will have additional opportunities for you to hear more questions come up as you're filling out your application. You can join another one of these. We'll also have application clinics in French and in Spanish coming up. So if those are languages that you are more comfortable in, those will be available to you, I believe, in March, right, Eliana? Those ones are in March? Yes, you can check out the application page for that. Great. All right, all. We'll go ahead and get started here. Like I said, drop any questions that you have in the chat and we'll go ahead and get to it. All right, so what is MIT Solve? To get started, MIT Solve is an initiative out of the President's office at MIT, and we run annual global challenges, which is what we're talking about today, to support innovators all around the world in their amazing ideas. And we select these innovators and connect them back to a community that we've built with the hope of driving lasting change. And we've worked with over 400 innovators from around the globe, including 43 fellows from our Indigenous Communities Fellowship, which is based in the US and Canada. Over the course of the last 7 years, 90% of the innovators that we have worked with are still operational. And we have a nice split between hybrid and for-profit teams as well as nonprofit teams. So we support both of those types of business models within our challenges. Something that I think we're really proud of is that 62% of our innovators are women-led. That's a stat that I love to see, especially in a tech-related challenge. And 62% of our innovators are based in the Global South. And as I mentioned, this is definitely a global application, a global reach. We want to see your solutions from all over the world and the communities that you are touching. This is a bit of a graphic to show you kind of where folks that are selected as solvers are working. And we've had, it's over 20,000 applications from over 180 countries. So we continue to see that in our global challenges every single year, and that's something that's really great for us as well. Wonderful. So our global challenges timeline, this is a good kind of diagram to give you a sense of what's to come. You can see where we're at kind of in that yellow arrow block right now within the launch and application. So before that, we spend a few months on our challenge design to make sure that what we're putting out into the world and seeking innovators around is an area that we feel like innovation and technology can play a role in. And now we have these applications that are open for you all to apply to and share the ideas that you are working on. Once the challenges close on April 18th, we will go through a few month process of going through some screening and judging. So we recruit judging panels for each of our different challenges. These are made up of about 20 to 25 what we call our challenge leaders. These are global leaders from around the world that have expertise in these different challenge areas. So we work really hard to make sure we have a diverse set of folks that are looking at these applications. And that takes us a few months to go through that process. Within that, if you are selected as a finalist, there'll be a pitch day, and we will talk more about that at that time. In September, we will announce the selected teams to the world during an event. And then after that, we kick off our 9-month support program, which I will talk more about in a moment, and accumulate everything with an amazing event on MIT campus in May. All right, so I imagine you're somewhat familiar with this since you are here and you've looked at our webpage and have maybe an idea of what you want to apply for. But we have 5 open challenges at the moment. So we have a global economic prosperity challenge, a global learning challenge, a global climate challenge, one around health equity, and one around Indigenous communities in the US and Canada. So these are the opportunities in front of you to be able to apply to this year. Something that's a bit different this year, if you've been following our work in the past, they've been a little bit more of a specific topic. This year, we're really looking for exceptional innovators across these topic areas more generally. So it's more likely that your idea and your solution will fit really well into these challenges this year if in the past you've struggled to find kind of the perfect fit. Within our challenges, if you are an innovator that's based in the US, we have a program for Black and Brown innovators. This allows for access to culturally responsible resources, some additional travel support, and some coaching as part of that 9-month support program if you are selected. And if you are selected as a solver, so one of the innovators that is makes it kind of to the very end, so we call our solvers. Upon selection, you will receive a $10,000 prize from Solve. This is unrestricted funding. This is something that all of our solvers receive upon selection. And you'll also receive access to additional prize pools. So we have a prize pool of over $1 million, and this will be allocated to the solvers depending on the prize funder's preference. So there's a lot of back and forth with our prize funders. There's certain eligibility for certain prizes. You can see more about the specifics on our website underneath the different prizes. But for example, we have a prize that's for our climate challenge that's from the Prince of Albert of Monaco Foundation that's really focused on ocean innovation. And so if that's something that you're working on, you have the opportunity to apply for that prize, and the prize funders will allocate that money accordingly. You also have access to investment through our internal investment fund, which is Solve Innovation Future. So they invest in for-profit teams that are in our portfolio. We provide travel stipends to both of the in-person events. So these take place in New York City and in Massachusetts in the US. So that will be provided. We talk with you a lot. So Eliana and myself and our other colleagues will work with you about what are the things coming up for you? What are the needs that you have? What are the roadblocks that you're hitting? And we will work with you to introduce you to the right kind of people in our network that maybe can help you, whether that is a potential funder or someone that has the right kind of resources for you. And within that, we also have a 9-month support program that includes some leadership coaching, workshops, depending on what your needs are, access to different folks within our network. And of course, once a solver, always a solver. So if you're selected, you stay with us. We like to stay in touch, and you always have access to our events that we run. We do have prizes that are open to past teams. So that's something to look forward to. And of course, the investment in Solve Innovation Future continues past the year that you're selected. A little bit more about the specifics of the 9-month support program, like I mentioned. I mentioned there is leadership coaching sessions, different exposure in the media. So our communications team works really hard to match you up with the right folks that are doing stories around the areas of impact, the areas of interest that you are working within. Eliana puts together some really amazing workshops and trainings with different folks in our community that are there to support you. And of course, having, access to our pro bono and in-kind resources that we have as well. All right, let's dive into a few of the details around the specifics of the application. In case you're in the process of working on that right now. A few things about the application. There's a few sections that are required that you fill out. It won't let you submit the application without this information being filled in. But there are 4 sections. So 2 of those sections are mandatory or required. 2 of those sections are not. I would encourage you to fill out all 4 sections. The more of the picture that we can get of what you're working on, the judges will be looking at this, our team will be looking at it. The more of a picture that you can paint within these 4 sections, it really does help us get a sense of the work that you're doing. And so I would encourage you to fill out all 4 of these if you can. For a few things to keep in mind when we're talking about the different application sections is we look for innovators that have a prototype, a working prototype as part of their solution. This is the case for all 4 of our global challenges. It's not the case with our Indigenous Communities Fellowship. So if that's something you are specifically interested in, we do accept concept stage solutions within the fellowship. But if you are applying to either the economic prosperity, the health, the learning, or the climate challenge, we do ask that you are past the concept stage, that you do have a working prototype developed. The application, this is so important, the application does not automatically save. So if you are working on the application on the web platform, please, please, please save it as much as you can. Another thing that I tend to recommend to people is if you want to work on it in a separate document so that you have all the things that you are responding to saved in a Word document or a Google Doc, just so that they're at your fingertips in case something were to happen, you were to lose internet access or anything like that. I don't want all of your work to also be lost. So I would recommend having either typing it in a separate format or just copying and pasting it over as soon as you've typed something, so you have it just in case something happens. And of course, it does expire after about 2 hours. So you want to keep an eye on the clock, make sure you're hitting save as much as you can. There are some character and word limit and file limits within the application. Pay attention to those. You won't be allowed to submit if you are over the word count or the file limit. Something to keep an eye on is within the application, you'll see different questions marked as public and different questions marked as for internal use only. The ones that are marked for internal use only won't be posted publicly. So that's just for us, for Solve's information. So that does not go anywhere. Anything that's marked as public, as soon as you submit your application, it is available on our website for people to see. So keep that in mind. Anything that you're putting in a public section, you want to make sure you're comfortable having on the internet. And if you include a video, a pitch video, which I always recommend, it's great to hear directly from you about what you're working on. Just make sure if you include it as a YouTube link or anything, it's a publicly viewable link and not private, so that we can see it. If you're part of a team and you want other members of your team to work on the application with you, your team member will need to submit or create an account on Solve's platform in order to be able to edit your application. And once they have an account, to add them, you go to edit the application and you can search for the team member on Solve's platform, and it should be able to pull them up. One thing of note is that the team lead, whoever you indicate as the team lead, should be either the CEO or someone in C-suite, executive director, founder. It should be the person kind of in charge of the organization and the operations. That's important because that's the person we'll be in contact with. So make sure that's the right email address and everything. Don't have, if you have an intern working and helping you with your application, for example, make sure that whoever's in charge is marked as the team lead. And then when you're ready to submit your solution, you go ahead and hit that submit button. The good news is that if you decide you want to edit something or add something, you still can do that up into the deadline. So this is great, especially as we get closer to April 18th, as the deadline approaches. I always encourage you to submit your application a little bit before that deadline, just in case something happens, in case you lose internet coverage. We do not accept late applications. So we have enough time. We're talking together in February. So there's plenty of time for you to submit your application. And if anything happens, we'll give you an email address at the end that you can email. We are going to be a lot more responsive and able to help you earlier on in the process versus like right on the application deadline day, which of course you can imagine our inboxes get flooded. So please do that as early as possible. Keeping in mind that once you hit that submit button, your application is publicly viewable, so people can see it. It's part of our open innovation process, so keep that in mind as you're submitting your application as well. All right, let's dive into just a few frequently asked questions before we open it up to you all to hear your thoughts and any questions that come up. So something that we mentioned within our application process is we do ask that you have a working prototype and that your innovation or your solution has some level of technology involved in it. Now, I will say Solve defines technology rather broadly. So this looks very different for different people, and depending on what kind of field you're working in, it can be, the complex technology that you might think about, the hard tech like AI and robotics. But we also really want to see technologies that are leveraging traditional and ancestral technologies or using nature as tech. So we want to see how you've gotten creative in that. You can apply for multiple of our global challenges, but you can't be selected for multiple of our global challenges. So if you make it through the review phase, the judging rounds, we will ask that you make a decision on if you want to be, for example, if you've applied for health and climate, we will ask for you to choose which one you feel like is a better fit. I don't typically encourage this approach. I think, really find the one that you're most excited about and apply. But if there's true overlap between your different, where your solution fits in multiple challenges, go for it. We're just going to ask you to make a decision if it comes down to it. And the time commitment in terms of being selected as a solver. So over the course of the 9-month program, we estimate about 25 hours of time will be allocated to solve. This is in the form of leadership coaching, which is a one-on-one opportunity with a coach, within our workshops, we have cohort calls where you connect with other solvers. And of course, that it doesn't include the events that we have, which are a few days of a time commitment that we will give you ample heads up to be able to plan your schedule around. And of course, we always say that the more time that you commit, the more you're going to get out of it, the better relationships you're going to build. So this is just kind of a general estimate for you to keep in mind. All right, some criteria. This is, I think, pretty helpful as you're putting together your application and you're thinking about the language that you want to use here. The first 5 that are on the left-hand side of the screen are ones that we use right off the bat. So these are criteria that we are looking at the minute we start doing our reviews. So making sure that there's alignment between your solution and the global challenge that you've applied for. We look at potential for impact. So we want to hear about how you're intending to impact the community or the population that you're working in. We'll look at feasibility. So is this a feasible solution given the context or the location? We'll look at innovative approach. We want to see that this is a new application of technology or a new business model or a new process that you've implemented. We want to see why you're so excited about working on this. And of course, inclusive human-centered design is something we always think about. So how are you thinking about inclusive and equitable outcomes within your solution, within your operations, within your implementation? And then on the right-hand side of the screen, these three areas are ones that we take into consideration towards the later part of the review process. So in the finalist stage, we will start to think about how are you prepared to scale your solution? What kind of partnership potential is there? And doing some review around technical feasibility of depending on what kind of technology that you have involved in your solution. Few ways to strengthen your application. Like I said before, there's 2 sections that are considered required and 2 that are optional. The more information you can give us, the better. So spend the time to fill out the additional parts of the application. And I always encourage a pitch video. I love to hear from the innovators that are, and be able to see a little bit. So if you have the resources and you're excited about having a pitch video, it does not have to be complex. It can be you recording yourself on Zoom, talking about your work you're doing. So I'd always encourage you to add that in. There's some help text that is baked within the application to pay attention to. We also have an eligibility quiz. Maybe Eliana, you can link that here. This is a good opportunity for you to kind of check where you're at within the application process to make sure that you are, like, your solution and the work that you're doing is a good fit for our global challenges. So this can kind of help you narrow that down. We do have an MIT X course that could also be useful if you're thinking about your business model. Of course, we have a great web page around Becoming a Solver that has all the resources that I've talked about today, but also additional ones that I didn't hit on. So that's worth a read through if you have some questions. And then, like I said at the very beginning, you can always attend one of these application clinics. We have a few more between now and April 18th. So as you have more questions that come up, happy to have you join us again here. All right, a few final reminders. One thing I haven't mentioned yet is around ChatGPT. This is a whole new world that we've entered in generative AI and chatbots, and they can be really helpful for you to kind of figure some things out, but we don't encourage a copy and a paste here. They're going to feed you this chatbot's going to feed you the same information that other people on this call are going to get. And so we want to make sure to hear your personal voice and understand why you're passionate about what you're working on. I can't overstate that enough. It really comes through. We can tell if you've used ChatGPT on your application. So just if you want to use it as a resource to help you kind of put some thoughts together, I think that's great. But make sure you don't lose your personal voice throughout your application. I think it really can be a disadvantage. And then, like I said, I will reiterate this. Don't wait till the last minute to submit your application. It's a real big bummer if the internet crashes right before or whatever might happen. So given that you can still make some small edits after you've submitted until the deadline, I highly recommend that you do that. All righty, that is enough of me talking. I will pass it over to you all. Happy to answer any questions that you have, anything I've just gone through that you want reiterated. All right, let me just close out. Stop sharing my screen so I can see you all. All right. When will the additional resources webpage for MIT Solve be released? I believe all of the information should be on the website already. Eliana, is there anything that we're waiting to be released?
I don't think so. Len, if you don't mind saying a little more about what resources webpage you're referring to, I'm happy to relink it in the chat again.
All right, is there a recommended size of the team? there's not a recommended team size, I would say. I wouldn't necessarily include all of your team members as part of the application, maybe just a handful of you that are working on it together. There's no need to list all of the members of your team as part of your application. That won't be something that we necessarily look at. We do ask within the application about your team size, and that's just for us, but to have a sense of the work that you're doing and your solution, but there is not a recommended or maximum team size. But don't add 30 people onto your solution or into your application. All right. Yeah, Danielle, I'm happy to respond to that. So in previous years for our challenges, we focused on very specific topics. So I will use climate for an example. We've done a challenge around low carbon housing in the past years, which was looking for innovators in that space. And this year for climate, we're really looking for exceptional climate entrepreneurs working around the world with a focus on a few dimension areas. And the dimension areas that we're focused on are because we see gaps in innovation, or we have additional prize funding resources around. So that is kind of areas that we're focusing on, but we're selecting across a wide range of topics this year. So that's a little bit of a different approach than the very specific niche topic that you might have seen in past years, that maybe if you've looked at, you're like, oh, my solution doesn't fit perfectly into that. That might not be the case this year, since it's a little bit more broad.
Great, thank you.
No problem. It's a great question, Sahil. We will be selecting 6 innovators per challenge, so a total of 30. So for economic prosperity challenge, we will select 6 solvers. And the approximate number of applications, it varies, but we typically see for all of the challenges as a total, over 1,000 applications come in. June, just like Eliana said, we recommend it's a CEO or an ED for the pitch video. It's not required. I think that typically makes the most sense for it to be the team lead that you are, that is applying to the challenge, to be the figurehead, the person that we're seeing in that video. But if that's not what you have at your fingertips, not what you have available, but you have a pitch video, I would recommend pitch video versus no pitch video. So that would be okay. Just give me 1 second, scanning through. All right, Danielle, if you're working on a prototype would be in the pilot stage during screening and jet. I would select that you are in the pilot stage during in that, if it's going to happen after, within the time of select or after you submit your application, I think that's appropriate. But I think it's fine to also put prototype. It's good for us to have kind of a sense of where you're at. So I don't think either way would be fine. You'll have an opportunity to kind of explain where you're at within the application as well. So you can expand on it a little bit more. Sahil, for the Global Climate Challenge, we mentioned the word communities quite a bit. We are talking about the communities that you are working in. So is your solution working in a specific community? Are you applying your technology in a specific community? Are you looking to expand into certain communities? So it's really about, the area that you're working in, the people that you're having impact on. We want to hear more about that. So not necessarily for folks that are just more vulnerable, but we are really excited to see solutions that are focused on communities that will be more vulnerable because of climate change. Lynn, there is not one solution, one area that's more competitive than the other. They really are the same. Everything goes through the same process internally. So none of those are different. So I wouldn't say there's one track that is more competitive or one challenge that's more competitive than others. Eliana, are there ones that I've missed? I'm just scrolling back through here.
Doing the same here.
Okay.
I will add one resource to the webpage. No, I'm sorry, to the chat, which is the solver map. In the solver map, you can see all the solvers that we have selected in the past. And on the right and the left side, you can see a variety of filters. So for instance, if you want to see solutions that have been selected in the economic prosperity pillar, you can filter for that there. If you're curious, as someone in the Q&A section was about ancestral technologies, you can also filter for different technology types to see what other solutions have been selected in the past. We always encourage you to review past applications and how others have portrayed maybe a solution that is using the same technology that you are, or has been, a successful application in the pillar that you're applying to.
Danielle, for thinking about the vision of your product, I think that the best section is probably the third section within the application. I think I'm doing that off the top of my head, but one of the not required sections allows you to expand a little bit more on kind of where you're going and thinking about the future and thinking about partnerships that you're excited to develop. So that would be a good place to leverage and add additional information about where you're going, in more future vision than where you're at now. There's an opportunity for you to expand a bit on that. And if you are selected as a finalist, you'll have an opportunity to pitch to the judges and be there for a question and answer with them as well. So they'll be allowed for some additional clarity at that point in the process if you do make it to the finalist round. Any other questions? Happy to have you unmute and ask me, or drop them in the chat. If I missed one, please feel free to copy and put it back in. So MIT Solve Ed Youth Innovation Challenge is a challenge that has run separately from Global Challenges. We do not have one open at the moment, but we do not have an age limit on the Global Challenges. So we will accept innovators, whether it's youth innovation or not. So I encourage you to apply for that if you've looked at Solve Ed in the past. Roger, that's a great question. I think what we offer here is slightly different than maybe some of those other programs would. I think that it's always valuable to have a diversity of portfolio when you're thinking about what to apply for. I would say the support that we're able to provide in terms of connections to folks within our network, going through that 9-month program, having access to networking opportunities is maybe a little bit different than you might receive with DARPA or DoD. Definitely great funding resources there, and we work with different resources around NSF and such, but it's a little bit of a different opportunity in terms of the support that you're receiving on top of the unrestricted funding that you would receive. So a little bit of a different portfolio, I would say, of opportunity. Lynn, there are some other opportunities. I don't have them off the top of my head about what is open right now at MIT. MIT Solve is really focused externally and globally around the world, which is slightly different than other programs at MIT. A lot of different MIT programs are focused on fostering innovation within campus. So in terms of being open to the public, I think Solve is likely a really good fit. There's occasional calls that come out of MIT for other opportunities, but I think this is the most relevant one that I know of. how technical should your solution be? That varies. That varies depending on what you're working in. We ask that you have some level of technology involved in your solution. That does not mean it needs to be overly technical. That's not something that we require. We see it. We see folks that apply with and are selected with hard tech, and we work with those teams the same as we would work with a team that maybe doesn't have hard tech involved. So don't let that be something that limits you from applying. I think we're looking really at the broad range of technology within the applications. Lillian, great question. Opportunities after the program. So you stay involved with us. We'll continue to share resources that we come across, opportunities that we come across, different calls that you might be relevant for. We really try to act as resources for you. So you'll develop if you're applying for the climate challenge, we'll stay in touch. I want to hear about what you're doing. We send out an annual survey so that we can get kind of an update about where you're at. So as we're talking to investors or whoever it might be, we can keep you in mind and have updated information about what you're working on. We invite innovators, past innovators, to different speaking opportunities that we are engaged in. Solve Innovation Future continues to look at our portfolio of innovators after they've gone through the program to be selected within that process. Our workshops are open. Some of our workshops are open to alumni as well. And of course, an invitation to our events. Lynn, in terms of finding teammates, love to hear that you're an undergrad student and thinking about applying here. I would maybe look for different resources on campus, whether there's different clubs or different folks in your classes or different majors that might be relevant for diversifying your team. I would suggest maybe looking at different places like that on campus. Thank you, Eliana. So Heel, I'm not sure I quite understand your question. Do you mind coming off of mute and asking? Or just writing it in the chat? Lillian, for success rate of our previous solvers, they're 90% still in operation. So we stay in close touch with them. It's really fun to see them continue to grow and scale. So we have a pretty high success rate in terms of that. We have a monitoring and evaluation team that helps us take the right kind of metrics, helps our solvers make sure that they're collecting the right kind of metrics, so that we can understand impact and areas of opportunity and growth. So that's something that we will also work with you on throughout the course of the program if you're looking at making sure that you're capturing the right kind of data internally as well. Danielle, it does not have to be an investment. So under the pilot, it says for-profit has to be completed a fundraising round with investment capital. It can be not in a traditional sense. It can be with different financing instruments as well. Helpful to expand on that within the application as well, if there's specifics that are maybe outside traditional investment there. So Roger, we like Eliana said in the chat here, our team does not do one-on-one calls to kind of get us to talk through if you're eligible, just to try to maintain fairness, honestly, and to protect our staff's time a little bit as well. As you can imagine, we get a lot of outreach from folks. I recommend looking through folks that have been selected in the past, doing the eligibility requirement little survey to get a sense if it's something that you should apply for. If there's specific questions that you really are just curious about these little areas, I would say that the help desk is probably best to send an email to. Eliana will drop the email address in the chat here. And this is a good thing to kind of maybe save and keep on your radar in case something comes up as you're submitting your application or going through the process. This is a good place to reach a member of the MIT staff to answer a question. Sahil, I would look at the climate challenge, probably likely for that. All right, all. Any other questions? Feel free to raise your hand, come off mute, drop them in the chat. All right. Well, thank you for being here today. I'm so glad. I hope that was helpful. As you're thinking about applying to the challenge, we're really grateful for you and the work that you're doing. We're excited to read more about it once you apply. Eliana and I will stay on here for about another 5 minutes. So if you have additional questions, we are here to answer them. But wishing you a wonderful rest of your week. Thanks, Maria.